Okay, this is the distances and heights for our original Catapult. We actually had to revamp it because the first one didn't work out well enough. So looking at our first distances flown, we have 4 settings here, actually 8 trials for each. And looking at it, settings 3 and 4 are clearly above the first 2 settings, which were pretty weak, and understandably, since we didn't have to pull as far back on those. Actually, looking at our data here, the angles are much higher or the angles are much lower for settings 3 and 4 because we pulled them much farther back. So obviously, I think they would launch much farther. And setting 3 and 4, as well as 1 and 2, are all pretty consistent, although the longer they go, the more they seem to fluctuate. Now, out of all the settings, I'd say 60 and 40% range were the 2 where we actually got the Catapult to go as high as 1 meter, which was pretty hard for us, and most of the ranges we barely even came close to around 0.8 or so, which obviously caused us to revamp. But for this one, we actually managed to get our 4th setting to 1 meter high one time. Setting 1 and 2 didn't come close, neither did setting 3 came relatively close, but that's really it. For 40% range, this is another one where setting 4 also managed to take control and go above, oh no, that's setting 3, sorry, the colors mixed me up. But yeah, you can see for setting 3, we actually managed to go above 1 kind of consistently, but we were still worried that when we retested it wouldn't reach it because we often had times trouble loading and the spoon would shift and turn sometimes and it'd go really far to the right or to the left, which is why we ended up actually having to move our Catapult 10 inches to the right of the bucket in the end. Looking at 50%, this is actually our worst range. I don't know why. You would think 50% would be the best, but we actually had the most variability at this point, and we never even reached 1 meter high. This also has to do with the fact that our Catapult is wildly inconsistent a lot of the time, and sometimes when pulling back our spoon, it would not launch right, and also we were in a very cluttered environment and under time constraints, so it was very hard to get very great results. As you can see, we didn't really even hit 1 meter, and our results are varied very much, so not very good. Now, this is us testing it after revamping it by ourselves. The results are obviously still a little bit wild, but all around or above 1 meter away, what we ended up doing was putting a book under the front of the Catapult, which increased the angle. So basically the Catapult itself would launch higher. So even if it didn't launch farther, which it also did, considering 45 degrees is the optimum angle anyway, but we just needed to launch higher, and so since the book helped it launch vertically higher, that was what we ended up going with. Also, the blessing in disguise was that our rubber band that we used to pull back the spoon ended up breaking while we were retesting it, and I ended up redoing it and found a much stronger and tighter rubber band that when we pulled back, it ended up going much higher. Now, the 4th setting could go the highest, but it was also wildly inconsistent, and we found it was the hardest one to use because of how hard it was to pull all the way back down to the bottom string and fit under without the spoon swaying a lot and without it accidentally releasing or getting the ping pong ball in the spoon. And we found setting 3 to be the most consistent, that gray line there, and also the best setting, so we ended up going with that setting. Now this is 100 inches away, We actually only tested 100 inches away because it was, an even 100, and we figured we just kind of started there and it worked out. Now there might have been a better distance, but we were under a bit of a time constraint, and we actually found that this setting worked relatively well, and we ended up going with it in the end, and we got it in 7 tries, so I think it worked out well.
One of the siege weapons used in the medieval times includes a medieval mangonel. Mangonels fired heavy projectiles into a bowl-shaped bucket at the end of its arm. The medieval mangonel was used for aiming various missiles at castles, fortresses, and cities. This type of catapult was easy to construct, and wheels were added to the design to ensure maneuverability. The medieval mangonel complemented the other available siege weapons. The medieval mangonel was not as accurate as a ballista, but was able to throw missiles further than the trebuchet missiles were thrown in overhead arc, as opposed to the straight trajectory of the dart-throwing ballista. The medieval mangonel is believed to be an ancient war engine, which invented by the Romans in 400 BC as a light alternative to the ballista, which also had the addition of wheels. The medieval mangonel reached Europe during the medieval era and was used extensively by the French. It was introduced in England in 1216 during the Siege of Dover.
This is our catapult. So there are 2 forces acting on it when the ping pong ball is released. So first we have force of gravity, which pulls it in the negative y direction. And this makes sure that it hits the ground and doesn't stay in the air for however long it wants. And then air resistance is the second force that's acting on it, and that's pushing it in the opposite way of which it's going. If we were to calibrate the catapult, which we did, that is also going to take into account air resistance. And what we did to change our catapult was we actually added more rubber bands to the middle of it to make it go farther, but also make it go a little higher, reach that 1 meter mark. So those are the 2 forces that act on our catapult.